Konami. It's definitely not what it used to be. And that's what I want to focus on, what it used to be. There's some truly great Konami franchises. I want to look at Castlevania, one of Konami's oldest IPs. Now I will have a warning, but later in the video I'm going to spoil the whole story. With that out of the way, let's talk about one of the greatest games to come out of Konami, well, when it was great. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Castlevania Symphony of the Night was first released in Japan as Dracula X Nocturne in the Moonlight on March 20th, 1997. It was released as Castlevania Symphony of the Night in the United States on October 2nd, 1997. And in Europe under the same title on November 1st, 1997. Symphony of the Night is a direct sequel to Dracula X Rondo of Blood, released for the PC Engine in 1993. The sequel originally began its development on the Sega 32X. It was cancelled and then moved to the Sony PlayStation. Toru Hagihara, who had previously directed Dracula X Rondo of Blood, started as the director and producer of Symphony of the Night. During production, Hagihara was promoted, and Koji Igarashi, who was the co-director, was asked by Hagihara to take over and finish the project. Ayami Kojima did the amazing artwork and character design. Using ingenious techniques, Kojima completely changed the Castlevania art style. Ayami Kojima's style would go on to define the series for years to come. Michiru Yamane composed the soundtrack. She was heavily inspired by the artwork of Ayami Kojima, and this is definitely an amazing soundtrack. Koji Igarashi, Ayami Kojima, and Michiru Yamane would all continue to work together on future projects, as well as being the driving force behind most Castlevania titles. Before I go on to the game, I'd like to quickly touch on the Saturn port. The port was handled by a different team. This version added 2 new parts of the castle, as well as new music and adding Maria Renard as a playable character. The latter feature would be added in future releases. The Saturn version is, however, an inferior port. Koji Igarashi had this to say about the Saturn port. I understand why fans who have never played the Saturn port would be interested in those features, but I really don't feel good about them. I couldn't put my name on that stuff and present it to Castlevania fans. Wow, I never realized he and I had such similar voices. When I started this video, I was going to play the PS1 original. I ultimately decided to go with Castlevania Requiem for the PS4. Symphony of the Night comes bundled together with Rondo of Blood, and also mainly just because I hadn't beaten this version yet. I've lost count of how many times I've beaten the PS1 version. One disappointment with the PS4 port is the removal of the original voice acting.
Needs a savior such as you.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets! But enough talk! Have at you!
And it gets replaced with this.
Ha! Mankind! A cesspit of hatred and lies! Fight for them, and die for their sins!
This version is based on the PSP port that was an unlockable in Castlevania the Dracula X Chronicles. It's an overall pretty good port though. Symphony of the Night picks up with the final battle with Dracula from Rondo of Blood. You can't lose this battle, and if you do run out of health, Maria picks you back up.
Richter! I'll lend you my strength!
Upon defeating Dracula, the game goes to the prologue. 4 years later, on the night of a full moon, Richter Belmont vanishes. Maria Renard sets out to find Richter. Dracula's castle emerges from the mist, so she decides that looks like a good place to begin her search. Alucard, the son of Dracula, is awakened from his eternal slumber by the cackles of evil, so he sets out for the castle as well. We take on the role of Alucard, which is Dracula backwards. But you already knew this, didn't you? And he comes with some pretty overpowered equipment. Alucard is stopped by death. Like the death. As in the Grim Reaper? Now our boy isn't fazed by this. In fact, he talks down to death. Grimmy doesn't like that. So he takes all of our overpowered equipment away. Who does Alucard think he is talking to death like that? What does he think he can walk up to death and easily layeth the smacketh down? Oh. Well, like I was saying, death takes all our stuff away. Laugh while you can, Death. Laugh while you can. From this point, the game opens up, and you're free to explore the castle. You'll run into roadblock after roadblock. Well, more like castle block. Anyway, once you have the proper ability, you'll be able to backtrack to the areas you couldn't access before. You can keep track of your progress with your map. A very Metroid-like map. You might even call this a Metroidvania. There are plenty of enemies and bosses along the way to Dracula's throne room. A lot of these bosses really go down in a blaze of glory. Yeah, you level up too. This improves your defense and attack damage. There's also plenty of equipment to find in Dracula's castle. There are healing items and other items laying around too. Combat moves pretty quick, and controls are precise. The game's not hard either. Definitely one of the easier games in the series. But this is one hell of a fun game. Now Alucard has some abilities. Being the son of Dracula has his perks after all. Alucard can transform into a wolf, a bat, and poison mist. He can also double jump, super jump, and use magic. Magic isn't really necessary to get through the game though. I've personally never been very good at pulling off the fighting game button combinations required to cast spells. Alucard also has familiars. They level up in their own way. These creatures can spot breakable walls and press switches. The librarian acts as a shopkeeper. He sells items and buys any gems you come across. The librarian has an enemy list. Here you can see the enemies you've killed. Save rooms are all over the castle. A polygonal coffin surrounds Alucard when saving. HP and MP are filled as well. Fast travel rooms are also in different areas. These definitely save time when it comes to backtracking. Visually, this game is aged incredibly well. Alucard's sprite looks so cool. Sprite work in general is great. Monster and boss design are top notch. Each part of the castle is unique and the level of detail is insane. There aren't many 2D PS1 games that look this good. Then there's the soundtrack. I mean, the music's just phenomenal. For instance, when I imagine a Colosseum in Dracula's castle, this is what I imagine the music would sound like. See, I can't even really joke about it, because it still sounds good regardless of if it suits the Colosseum or not. This is the only theme that comes to mind, but honestly I couldn't imagine changing anything on the soundtrack. The story plays out in cutscenes. Usually it's a short conversation between Maria and Alucard, but there's a few other characters. Okay, from here on out, major spoilers. You've been warned. So it turns out Richter Belmont is running things. He wants to resurrect Dracula to have a battle that lasts all eternity. After getting the gold and silver rings, you have a boss battle with Maria. She gives Alucard the holy glasses. Alucard sees that Richter is being controlled by the Dark Priest Shaft.
How inconvenient. But we've only just begun. The Master's ascension is at hand.
Then a castle appears in the sky that's upside down. You can kill Richter and get the bad ending. Everyone I knew in my middle school that played it, we all got the bad ending. Fast forward a couple months, and one of the kids in one of my classes was talking about a second castle that was the same as the first one, just upside down. He told me what to do. I went home and booted the game up, and my mind was blown. Learning about this at the time was such a cool memory, and there was nothing else like it. Unfortunately, this part of the game isn't as enjoyable as the first half of the game. Don't get me wrong though, there are some cool boss battles in this castle. But you have to spend a lot of time in bat form, flying around slowly. The music is also a little lacking in this half. It's not bad per se, there's just one theme that gets used for most parts of the castle. Hey, I'm not saying the Upside Down Castle isn't good. I love this game. And I also chose to go for the most OP weapon in Symphony of the Night, the Chrysogram. It pretty much breaks the game. You get this blade of death by farming shmoos in the Upside Down Library. It can take a little while, but it'll drop eventually. Wielding this mighty sword will take challenge, punch it in the face, and throw it out the window. Now after you've collected all the parts of Dracula, you go back to the center of the castle. Smack Shaft around for laughing at you. Dracula's up next, but I used the Chrysogram. I felt bad for Dracula. He didn't stand a chance. From there, Dracula and Alucard say their goodbyes. Richter, Maria, and Alucard watch as the castle is destroyed. Alucard leaves, and Maria goes after him, in the best ending. I mistakenly didn't explore enough of the castle, and got the second best ending.
You suck!
In this ending, Alucard says it's best for the world for him to disappear, and Maria agrees. Pretty cool treatment for the dude that saved the world. Once you beat the game, Richter and Maria become playable. They are both very different from Alucard. For instance, they can't level up or change their equipment. Maria wasn't playable in the original Symphony of the Night. Simply name your file Richter to play as Richter, and the same for Maria. Well, I mean, name it Maria, not Richter. There's also an unlockable set of armor that changes the way Alucard plays completely. Castlevania Symphony of the Night comes from a time when Konami made some of the greatest games around. This game was originally supposed to be a side story, and it ended up becoming the blueprint for many of the games going forward. Today, other than a mobile game, there hasn't been a new game in the series for quite a few years. If it wasn't for the Netflix series, which is great by the way, Castlevania would be completely dead. Symphony of the Night is not only one of the best Konami games, many consider it to be one of the greatest games ever made. I'm in that group. Thanks for watching, please subscribe, and hey, if you enjoyed this video, consider watching one of my other videos. Thanks again, peace.